Hey everybody, what's going on? We're officially 1 week out from the NHL draft and there's plenty to dive into in this video. Before we get started, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It's as easy as clicking in the bottom right hand corner of this video. Now the Montreal Canadiens are still in an interesting spot leading up to having the 5th overall selection of the 2024 NHL draft. We still don't really have an idea on what prospects they're zeroed in on. We know who they like, we know who they reportedly like at least, and that's what we're going to go off of in this video. But I'm going to look at some of the prospects that I have rated highest on my board and who I believe would be the best fits with the Montreal Canadiens long term. I think there's a few names that immediately jump off the page. Now, I think the one that's going to draw the most attention, obviously, is Ivan Demidov, and he's the one that I have at the top of my list, and for good reason. I think just with what's coming in at the scouting combine that we just saw take place in Florida with the Russian participants, they had their own little showcase there. I think we're gaining a little more insight into what Demidov is and the type of person he is. So I believe that the Montreal Canadiens are going to like that a lot, which is something that's very positive in his direction, assuming he's still on the board with the 5th overall pick. But as of right now, the Montreal Canadiens are still missing that dynamic forward in their prospect system, and Demidov would immediately jump to the top of the page and give them that missing element that can really elevate this team from being a potential playoff contender down the road to being a playoff contender, really just one where it fills out the top six. It gives you that element that you're really lacking right now. And I believe that Demidov would make a perfect fit in the Montreal Canadiens top six for the next decade. After Demidov on my list would be Kaden Lindstrom. I believe the Montreal Canadiens could also use that big center down the middle of the ice with the creativity and competitive drive that Lindstrom brings to the table. Of course, there's still some health concerns riding around Lindstrom, but reports suggest that there's really nothing to worry about long term as of right now, even though back injuries are typically tricky. You still look at the ceiling for Lindstrom, and it's not hard to get excited about that player. As of right now, it looks as though the Columbus Blue Jackets at 4th overall have some interest in the player. If they go that direction, it could mean that Demidov is on the board for the Montreal Canadiens with the 5th overall pick. So there's pros and cons to how those first 4 selections in the NHL draft go. But Lindstrom is definitely high on my list for someone that I believe the Montreal Canadiens should and likely will target if he is available for them at the 5th overall pick. If you're looking at both Demidov and Lindstrom, I think as of right now, just because of the risks associated and the Russian factor with Demidov, I think the Canadiens would likely lean slightly toward Lindstrom, and I ultimately wouldn't have a problem with that. If they land one of Lindstrom or Demidov in the 2024 NHL draft with the 5th overall pick, it's hard not to be thrilled as a Montreal Canadiens fan. After that, that's where things get a little more interesting. If both of those players are gone off the board, that's where you have to get a little creative if you're the Montreal Canadiens. Personally, I would be taking the defensive value that you'd be getting with that selection and picking the best player available, which in my eyes, assuming he isn't going above that, would be Boam, the defenseman out of the United States. I just believe that he's a strong defender. He's someone that can move the puck. He plays a strong two-way game, and he has those offensive instincts that you're looking for that's currently lacking in the Montreal Canadiens system. I think he's someone that they really can pinpoint as a prospect that really elevates their defensive system right now. I think there's a lot of depth to the Montreal Canadiens prospect system at the moment. I'm not necessarily sold that there's a future number one defenseman in that mix, but there might be multiple number twos right now. So I think adding that potential number one defenseman in Boam would be a wild addition to the Montreal Canadiens system at the moment. So I think that there's value in that. And then you also have the potential of selecting a forward in the second tier as well, whether that's Tija Ginla, whether that's Beckett Seneca. There's lots of different options there for that potential 5th overall pick if the board doesn't necessarily swing the way the Montreal Canadiens would like it. But I think if you exit the NHL draft in the first round, at least in that top 10, with one of Kaden Lindstrom, Ivan Demidov, or Boam, I would be a very happy Montreal Canadiens fan if I were you. So I think that those are some of the names that the Montreal Canadiens will be looking heavily towards with that 5th overall selection. And personally, those are my top 3 wishes at the moment. That's it for me today from Cook's Corner. As always, let me know in the comment section down below who you're hoping for that the Montreal Canadiens select with that 5th overall selection. I'm Zach Cook. We'll see you later.